In the ancient land of Uz, there lived a man whose name was a shield against evil. Job was not just a man of immense wealth, he was a man of immense integrity. He had 7 sons and 3 daughters who filled his halls with laughter, and his livestock covered the hills like a living carpet of gold. He was a pillar of his community, a father to the fatherless, and a friend to the Creator. His life was a masterpiece of peace. But while Job was offering sacrifices of thanks on earth, a terrifying conversation was taking place in a realm he couldn't see. Behind the veil of the stars, in the very courts of the Almighty, a challenge was issued. An accuser stood before the throne and made a chilling bet that Job's faith was nothing more than a hollow transaction, that he only loved God because his life was easy. In a single devastating cycle of the sun, the hedge around Job's life was torn away. One by one, the messengers arrived. Fire fell from the sky, raiders emerged from the desert, a great wind struck from the wilderness. In less than 24 hours, the greatest man of the East became a man with nothing but the clothes on his back and the ashes beneath his feet. This isn't just a story about a man who lost his money. This is the story of a man who lost his world, his family, and his silence, only to find an answer in the heart of a whirlwind. This is the mystery of the man who lost everything in 24 hours. In the golden heart of the land of Uz, there lived a man whose very name was a fortress of integrity. Job was the greatest of all the men of the East, a man of such profound righteousness that his life seemed woven from the fabric of heaven itself. He walked with a quiet dignity, his wealth measured not just in his 7,000 sheep or his 10 beloved children, but in the unwavering peace of a clear conscience. Every morning, before the sun could kiss the horizon, he offered sacrifices of brace, a hedge of prayer surrounding his household. He lived in a sanctuary of divine favor, blissfully unaware that in the celestial courts, a terrifying wager was being signed in his name. Beyond the veil of the stars, a celestial court convened in a realm of blinding light. Among the sons of God stood the accuser, his eyes cold with a cynical hunger. When the Creator pointed to Job as a beacon of blameless integrity, the adversary sneered. "Does Job fear you for nothing?" he hissed, arguing that faith is easy when cushioned by a hedge of gold and a house of laughter. He claimed that the protection were stripped away, the man of Uz would curse the heavens to their face. In a moment of terrifying sovereignty, the challenge was accepted. The wall of divine favor was lowered, and the shadow of the accuser turned toward earth, ready to dismantle a masterpiece. The sun was still high when the first messenger arrived, his breath ragged with the scent of blood and iron. He spoke of Sabaean raiders and the edge of the sword, but before his tale could end, a second shadowed the doorway. Fire had fallen from the heavens, consuming the sheet in a flash of divine fury. Then came the third, whispering of Chaldean thieves and the theft of every camel. Finally, the air itself seemed to scream as the fourth messenger collapsed. A great wind from the wilderness had struck the house of Job's eldest son, burying all 10 children in a tomb of broken stone. In one single agonizing hour, the greatest man of the East was left with nothing but the silence of the dead. The adversary returned to the celestial court, his malice unsatisfied by the mere destruction of wealth. "Skin for skin," he snarled, claiming a man will endure any loss as long as his own flesh is spared. The restriction was lowered further, and a shadow fell over Job's very body. From the soles of his feet to the crown of his head, he was struck with loathsome, burning sores that turned every breath into a battle for life. He retreated to the ash heap, a ghost of the man he once was, scraping his skin with broken pottery. Even his wife, shattered by their shared grief, urged him to curse God and die. Yet, through blood and ash, Job refused to let go of his integrity. News of the catastrophe traveled like a plague through the desert, reaching 3 men who called Job their brother. Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar arrived at the ash heap, but the figure they found was unrecognizable, a broken shadow of the prince they once knew. They tore their robes in a chorus of grief, throwing dust toward the heavens as they collapsed into the soot beside him. For 7 days and 7 nights, not a single word was spoken. The only sound was the whistling wind and the rhythmic scraping of pottery against raw skin. They sat in a sacred, terrible silence, honoring a sorrow so vast that human language felt like an insult to the weight of his misery. The sacred silence finally splintered under the weight of an unbearable why. Job opened his mouth, not to curse his Creator, but to lament the very day of his birth, wishing the womb had been his grave. The compassion of his friends instantly curdled into cold, religious calculation. They could not believe in a God who allowed the innocent to break. Eliphaz spoke first, his voice a sharpened blade of accusation, insisting that no man ever perished being truly blameless. They turned from brothers into prosecutors, picking at the scabs of his life to find a hidden sin that would justify his agony. As the debate spiraled, Job stood alone in the dust, defending an integrity that even heaven seemed to have forgotten. As the 3 elders fell into a brooding, exhausted silence, a younger man named Elihu could contain his fury no longer. He had waited in the shadows, his youth a muzzle against his burning words, but now his anger flared like a torch in the dark. He rebuked the friends for their hollow accusations and challenged Job for his prideful demand for a day in court. "God is greater than man," he proclaimed, his voice rising with the gathering wind. He spoke of a Creator who uses pain as a whisper to the soul, steering the heart away from the pit. As he pointed toward the darkening horizon, the very air began to tremble with a low, cosmic hum. The sky suddenly bruised to a deep, terrifying indigo, and the wind began to howl with a voice that was not of this world. A massive whirlwind descended upon the ash heap, a funnel of cosmic power that silenced every human argument. From the heart of the storm, the Creator finally answered, but not with an apology. He spoke of the foundations of the earth and the binding of the Pleiades, asking Job where he was when the morning stars sang together. Each question was a thunderclap, revealing a universe so vast and a design so intricate that human suffering was but a single thread in a tapestry of infinite glory. In the presence of the whirlwind, Job's why was swallowed by who. The voice from the whirlwind fell silent, leaving a ringing hum in the heavy air. Job, who had once filled the desert with his protests and demanded a day in court, now found his tongue clinging to the roof of his mouth. In the shadow of such overwhelming majesty, his grievances felt like grains of sand against a mountain. He bowed his head into the very soot that had been his bed, his heart finally surrendering to a wisdom he could not map. "I have spoken of things I did not understand," he whispered into the dust, "wonders too great for me to know." The man who lost everything finally found his peace, not in an explanation, but in a presence. The storm finally broke, and the voice in the whirlwind softened into a calm that healed the broken land of Uz. The Creator's favor returned, not because Job had found an answer, but because he had found his trust in the silence. The Lord rebuked the 3 friends, for their cold religious pride had failed the test of love, and he asked Job to pray for their restoration. As Job lifted his voice for those who had wounded him, the floodgates of heaven opened once more. His wealth was doubled,
His household was filled with the laughter of 10 new children, and his name was carved into eternity. The man who lost everything in 24 hours gained a legacy that would outlast the stars.